This video contains spoilers for JoJo Part 3 and 4, so please go watch and or read it already!
What the f- Walter?
Nuzlocke challenges. The Pokemon veterans know it, and they love it for making the franchise they enjoyed as a kid still enjoyable as an honestly challenging strategy game. A simple gym battle becomes more than just spamming Fire Blast, as now, lives are on the line. While the challenge of the game is the first thing that hooked me, MathWiz explained how the narratives of Nuzlocke keep his interest when watching Nuzlocke playthroughs. The narrative that he talks about shouldn't be confused with the story of the games. The story is quite literally the text that the game throws at you, like get the Pokédex, conquer the 8 gyms, and become the champion. Narrative, however, is created in games by your own gameplay experience. Every Nuzlocke experience is different through the very RNG-centered gameplay of Pokemon. The first capture on a certain route can be different every playthrough, and even when you catch the same Pokemon as another playthrough, its nature is probably different. Critical hits are always lurking around the corner, there's min-max damaging, and even shinies can pop up at any second. Can you believe it, r/Nuzlocke? Shinies! Bet you never had to implement shiny claws before. Anyways, MathWiz gives an example of narrative in Maryland's Black Wadlock, where he keeps bashing Trubbish.
Trubbish. Alright, time to take out the trash. Time to take out the trash. Taking out the trash! Oh, I know.
Eventually he captures a Trubbish for himself and he uses it. And that Trubbish is the sole reason that he gets through the Elite Four and gets this. This is just one example of a truly one-of-a-kind experience that only exists in Pokemon by the implementation of Nuzlocke rules. Now, when watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a lot of similarities can be drawn with the feeling of a Nuzlocke narrative. There's always this ragtag crew trying to defeat the big boss, with several mini-bosses if you will, in the journey leading up to said big boss. Death is always lurking around the corner. Brute force is almost never an option, so it mostly comes down to the wits of the characters to defeat an opponent. Battles become a puzzle of the minds against a foe that could end the hero's journey prematurely. Just like how one can simply barge into a gym with just one super effective move. If you're thinking that this sounds like I'm describing every shonen battle series ever, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure differs in that major character deaths are mostly unavoidable. You start getting attached to the cast until suddenly a deadly foe comes out of nowhere to almost sweep the entire team. Vanilla Ice is like the last Elite Four member of JoJo's. You feel good because you've almost reached the champion, but suddenly a nobody shows up and kills almost your entire team. Devastated by the loss, you have to quickly get yourself together and figure out a way to defeat the champion, with only a fraction of your team remaining. The scenes in Part 3, and Part 4 for that matter, where the characters look up at the sky to see their fallen comrades, evokes the same feeling to me as looking into my death box to remember my fallen Pokemon. And yes, I use the death box instead of releasing Pokemon because I can't be bothered to remember every Pokemon I've killed off. Even when the characters leave the screen, their impact on the narrative is unavoidable. I'd like to add that though I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, most of its characters don't have the most compelling characters. Let me explain. The easiest example of this is Jotaro in Part 3. He's a fairly simple character. He's stoic, to the point, and easily pissed off. He doesn't necessarily say much, but when he sees a problem, he usually solves it by punching it in the face. Does that make him boring to watch? Of course not. What Jotaro lacks in his character, he makes up for in his fights. Araki has a way of making every fight interesting by implementing very nonsensical or unpredictable powers and settings. Just like in a Nuzlocke, there's always tension in a fight, even if it's just a random foe. Just like I didn't love Jotaro immediately, I don't love every Pokemon I catch instantly. The bond between the Nuzlocker and his Pokemon, or her Pokemon, is forged through the different battles and hardships they face. Be it one Pokemon sweeping an entire gym, or one Pokemon being the last one standing after someone nearly sweeps your entire team. You care for the characters because you've been through so much with them. I care for Jotaro in his final fight with Dio, because I want to see him get revenge for Kakyoin, Avdol and Iggy. Speaking of Iggy, him joining the Stardust Crusaders reinforces the idea of the ever-changing team of a Nuzlocker. Jotaro, Joseph and Avdol start the journey and are quickly joined by Kakyoin and Polnareff. We already get a pretty good feel for the team in the first half of Stardust Crusaders, seeing how they travel from Japan all the way to Egypt. Then suddenly another member joins the team out of nowhere halfway through the story. You could make a case for him being just a simple HM slave, being able to use Fly, but without him Jotaro wouldn't have been able to defeat Ndul. Ndul. Ndul? I guess? With him added to the team, it truly feels like our heroes can beat any foe. He's the 6th member that's strategically added to cover more type effectiveness. Coincidence? Well, yeah, definitely, but an interesting one nonetheless. For more interesting team members, let's look at Koichi from part 4. He's the ultimate example of a Route 1 catch that doesn't seem to amount to a whole lot. He's there from the start and almost immediately dies. When Keicho Nijimura shoots Koichi with the arrow, it seems that his story is already over. However, surviving the pierce of the arrow means he'll develop a stand, so we know that this guy will actually get more interesting. When my Bidoof proves that he can take a hit, of course I'll train him up. That's the Nuzlocke spirit. Through the course of part 4 we see Koichi evolving with his stand Reverb, until he becomes the glorified badass that we all know and love. Or maybe I'm the only one that loves him, as he reminds me of another guy that starts off weak and grows up strong. But anyway, Koichi grows from a liability to a valuable teammate. He's like the Trapinch archetype of Nuzlocke. So what's a Trapinch archetype? Well, I just made that up writing the script, but it actually makes sense. Let me explain. Whenever I train a Trapinch in a Nuzlocke, it feels like dead weight. It can't really hold its own. When it evolves into Vibrava, there are more possibilities to him. He gets more moves, he gets the Dragon type, and is overall more useful. But he's still weak. Only when he becomes a Flygon, he actually starts to put in work. You look back on the times when he was just this little shit, taking up place in your team with the experience share, but now he's the one wrecking house. That's what Koichi's narrative feels like. He becomes a seriously strong stand user when he and Jotaro face sheer heart attack for the first time. He's in no way the same guy that you see in episode 1, introducing you to the town of Amorio. And let me add that Reverb Act 3's voice lines are absolutely hilarious, but you already knew that. Another thing from part 4 that has really made me recall some major Nuzlocke experiences is Rohan, another favorite character of mine, was the first one that figured out Kira's identity after he disguised himself. Though I felt like celebrating this character's victory, Araki seemed to have other plans for Rohan. I was genuinely shocked that this fabulous looking dude was just killed off without being able to help the rest of the team find Kira. Just when Rohan's stand power finally proved to be useful, it was rendered useless by Kira's killer queen. Let's compare this to a Nuzlocke situation. Imagine having an Altaria. Not necessarily the most useful Pokemon, but a cool looking one nonetheless. When trying to find a way to beat the Elite Four, you look up everyone's moves and you see that Altaria learns Dragon Dance. Amazing setup move, so it has to be useful. You enter the Elite Four and it's Altaria's time to shine. You start setting up Dragon Dances, smelling the victory already, and it gets crit. It gets freaking crit. I'd be devastated and extremely pissed off, and yes, this has happened to me before. If only it wasn't crit, victory would have been mine. It all seemed so easy, but now all your plans fall apart. So, what do I do now? I give it a second chance. Yeah, alright, this is definitely against the rules and spirit of a Nuzlocke. I have done this once in the past. And yeah, I beat the Elite Four and the champion, but it doesn't really feel like a victory. I know my Altaria died, so what I'm looking at right now just feels like a fake. The husk of the Altaria that I once knew. Now, tell me that Kira's defeat felt satisfying. To me, it absolutely didn't. We've seen our characters die, come back to life, and when they win, they don't really win by their own hand. It's just a stupid accident. It's such an unglamorous way to go out, you can't help but laugh in confusion. While the victory didn't feel genuine, it was definitely a wild ride. Diamond is Unbreakable is a one-of-a-kind narrative and my personal favorite part of JoJo. So far, cause I've only experienced up until part
5.
and yeah, I could read the manga, but the beautiful physical hardcovers are only at part 4 right now, so yeah, sue me. Araki's storytelling is one of a kind, and Diamond is Unbreakable resonated with me through the similarities of the Nuzlocke challenges I enjoy so much. So I don't mean to rag on Kira's death. I thought it was an absolutely unique way to wrap up such a compelling story. Its unique narrative of victory being achieved right after seeing the main cast killed off just reminded me so much of resetting in a Nuzlocke, which made me love it even more. There's some smaller comparisons I could make. Dio coming back from part 1 in part 3 feels like taking down Lance once again as a champion in Gen 2 of Pokemon. Fugo leaving the team in part 5 feels like benching one of your Pokemon for a certain fight. And then completely forgetting you had it in the first place. But yeah, I'm not mad. It's not like he was one of the more interesting characters in part 5, so yeah, no, I'm not mad. No, definitely not. No, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad! Anyways, I could probably talk about JoJo and Nuzlocke for quite some more time, but it's probably more fun with more people joining the conversation. So, have any of you guys experienced a JoJo moment in a Nuzlocke? Or maybe a more general anime moment? Let's talk about it in the comments. If anyone is interested in me giving more examples of personal stories, maybe I'll get back to it in a future video. For now, if you want me to talk more on Pokemon and anime, go watch my video on the 3D version of Mewtwo Strikes Back, and how Pokemon has apparently become self-aware of their horrible decisions. This has been Marv Lucky, see you in another video.